In this month's episode of the AnimeCons.com podcast, we talked with voice actor Tiffany Grant. Elizabeth tells us about Otakon. We discuss the importance of knowing Japanese at conventions, plus news and upcoming conventions. I'm Sketch, and this is the AnimeCons.com podcast for August 2009. This episode of the AnimeCons.com podcast is sponsored by the fine folks at DreamHost. In the Northeast, New York Anime Festival has announced the voice actress and singer Yuhi Makino will appear at their convention in New York City this September. Zenkai-Con has announced a new contest in which two attendees will have the chance to have lunch with the voice actor Johnny Young Bosch, Bash the Stampede. The Valley Forge, Pennsylvania convention has announced guests Trina Nishimura, the creators of the webcomics Geeks Next Door, Geist, the creators of webcomics Friday Nights, the Geek Comedy Tour, and comedian Uncle Yo. The New Hampshire convention, named Another Anime Convention, has announced guests including voice actors Tiffany Grant, Kyle Aber, Chris Kaysen, Todd Harpercorn, Bill Rogers, and Michelle Knotts. While in the Midwest, GeekCon has announced a streamlined pre-registration system that allows for easier online pre-registration and payment. The Wisconsin-based convention has also announced the third round of guests, including the Spoonie Bards, Aaron Paravo, and Raven Software. For the South, KamikazeCon will be returning to Houston, Texas next March, and has announced their first guest, Samantha Inoue Hart. MomoCon in Atlanta, Georgia has announced it will be running community events throughout the year, including a charity ball to benefit Susan G. Komen for the cure. For additional details about any of these announcements, please visit AnimeCons.com.
I'm here with Tiffany Grant. She's a very well-known voice actor and scriptwriter. Been in the industry for a very long time.
Very long time.
Most notably for Asuka from Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yes.
And a long-time convention guest.
Yes.
What was the first convention you were invited to as a guest?
The first convention that I was at as a guest was Project Acon, and that was in 1997, I guess May of 1997. I was only kind of a sort of guest there. I showed up and they gave me a guest badge. They didn't have a whole lot of guests, so I guess that was all right. And then the next year, 1998, I got invited back again, as more of an official guest. The funny thing was, when I went there the first time, and I had this badge that said special guest, I didn't really think anything. I guess I thought everybody got a badge that said special guest, so I did a couple panels, I signed some autographs. It was pretty weird.
And how did it feel to attend your first convention, or I guess first couple conventions as a guest?
Well, that was really strange, attending my first convention. Like I said, 1997. Voice actors were just kind of starting to go to conventions. There had been not a lot, but a few AnimeCons here in the U.S. up to that point. There were just maybe a few a year. There weren't a lot of them. There weren't 2 or 3 every single weekend all over the country. And voice actors were kind of just starting to go to conventions, so I was a little apprehensive about that, about how I would be accepted as a voice actor, because there was still the huge sub versus dub debate. And I can distinctly remember the first person who ever asked me for an autograph, I didn't even know what he was asking me. I couldn't comprehend that he wanted me to sign his item, whatever. I don't remember what I signed, but I remember him asking me, and he said something about signings, like doing signings, and I thought he was asking me about signing up for the mailing list. I was sitting at the ADV booth. I didn't really know what to do there, so I just helped him sell VHS, because that's what there was, and I think there was some laser discs and posters. So I was just helping him sell stuff. I didn't really know what else to do, and this guy asked me about signings, and I said, oh, and he's like, you want to sign up for the mailing list? Okay, it's over here. And then he was trying to ask me, but I don't know was embarrassed or what, but then the lady who was standing next to me, Janice Williams, she said, "Tiffany, he's asking you for your autograph." And I said, "Oh, no, that's not what you're asking me, is it?" and of course it was. And then I signed like half a dozen things for that guy, so wherever he is.
Do you see a difference between going to conventions like 12 years, 13 years ago, as opposed to attending conventions now as a guest?
I tell you, the difference between going to conventions 10 and 12 years ago and doing conventions now is like night and day. It's so vastly different. For one thing, with the advent of DVDs and now you get sub and dub on the same thing, there's the whole sub and dub debate is more or less dead, because the whole debate then centered around was, you know, you were going to spend about $30 to buy a videotape that was going to have 2 episodes on it. And if you were going to spend your $30 for your 60-minute videotape, what were you going to spend it on? Were you going to buy the version that was in Japanese with English subtitles, or were you going to buy the version that was dubbed into English? So that's why there was this big war. And that has essentially disappeared, you know. And yeah, there are people that still argue the merits of one versus the other, but it doesn't really matter, because now for $30 you can get about 6 episodes that are subbed and dubbed, you know. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And also the fact that the voice actors are pretty readily accepted now. We're not outcast or stoned or anything like that. And of course the really big difference is how many conventions there are. There used to be what people would refer to as convention season, meaning mainly the summer months. There's no convention season now. There's a convention every single weekend of the year. In fact, there's usually 2 or 3. And some weekends there might be 5 or 6 conventions in one weekend in various parts across North America. So that's incredible. The fact that almost anyone can expect that there's going to be an anime convention sometime during the year within, let's say, less than 100 miles of where they live. There's so many different levels that how conventions have changed in every possible way. Oh, and girls. There's so many more girls. I mean, now it's got to be at least 50-50, male and female, and it used to not be that way.
What's the furthest you've traveled as a guest for a convention?
I would say the farthest place that I have been at a convention would be Auckland, New Zealand. I guess geographically, I live in Houston, Texas, that's about the farthest point on earth that I could go to, and not, yeah, probably that is, I don't think I could go to a farther place. I think I've done it.
How did that convention compare to conventions in the U.S. or any other international conventions you've gone to?
Well, yeah, I've gone to several international conventions actually, and that particular convention in Auckland, it's called Armageddon Con, and that was their 10th year, so they were pretty good at it, and they had an attendance of about 30,000 people, so it was a very large event. It was in a multi-storied facility that was about 5 or 6 floors, and each floor kind of had their own thing. And so our area, we had this area that was like the anime area. And, you know, wherever I've done conventions, Ireland, I've done a lot of conventions, different areas in Canada, Australia. There's really, I think, a lot more similar than there is different. You know, just people are very avidly into their, whatever they're into, if it's anime or gaming or sci-fi. And they're usually, like I said, my favorite thing about conventions, everybody's open and accepting, and that's usually pretty much the case. And I have a great time.
Is there a convention you would like to go to but haven't? Patrick said that you have a goal of attending every anime convention in every state.
Yes, I would like to make sure everyone is aware of this. I didn't double check before I came here, but I think this is about my 36th state. So I'm getting, you know, I'm well over that hump at this point. I've gone to cons in about 35 or 36 states, and I've done a convention in actually the District of Columbia as well. And I kind of like to do one in every Canadian province, but I think that's probably not going to happen. I mean, some of them are really small and remote, so I am next month doing my 5th Canadian province, so that's very exciting. But well, there is one in particular that I would like to go to. It's in Glasgow, Scotland, and I used to live in Scotland. And when I did the convention in Ireland a couple of years ago, I did, after the convention, go over and spend about 10 days vacationing in Scotland, catching up with a lot of old friends and things like that. So I would love to go there, just because I love Scotland and I used to live there. So you know, I love traveling. I love going to different places, meeting people. But I'm convinced that at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to meet my goal of doing a convention in all 50 states. Kentucky, I'm talking to you.
Hopefully you can reach that. It'll be fun to see. Maybe Patrick can track it on his website. Thank you very much.
Otakon 2009 was held July 17th through the 19th at the Baltimore Convention Center and Baltimore Hilton Hotel. Now, Otakon 2004 was my first anime convention, and I unfortunately haven't been able to make it back to Otakon until this past month. So here's our review of Otakon 2009. Otakon features the usual convention fare: panels, a dealer's room, a video game room, artist alley, screenings, and a masquerade. The Baltimore Hilton completed construction last year, allowing the convention to expand with large panel rooms. Convention Center is a great venue, however strangely laid out, making it tough to navigate at times, especially to newcomers. The surrounding area has dozens of hotels and plenty of options to eat. The BCC is also a few blocks from the Inner Harbor, a popular tourist destination. Check out some of the pictures we took of the cosplayers we saw over the weekend. Pros for the convention: tons of attendees, many hotel choices, near the Inner Harbor, many food choices, and great variety of events. Cons: crowded, long lines for some events and autographs, narrow hallways got very crowded, convention center hard to navigate at first. For a full convention report and many more pictures, check out AnimeCons.com.
And before we get to our Q&A, we wanted to thank our sponsor, DreamHost. DreamHost is currently offering new subscribers unlimited bandwidth, unlimited disk space, plus 50 gigabytes of backup, unlimited email accounts, one-click installs for things like forum software, a shopping cart, all that wonderful stuff, one free lifetime domain registration, and more, all as low as $5.95 per month. Enter code CONS1 when you sign up and get your first month free. Some restrictions apply. See site for details. Learn more at dreamhost.com. This month's question was submitted by Joel. He writes, "Hi, I'm Joel." Hi, Joel. And I would like to know, how important is it to know at least a little Japanese, or at least how to say the important Japanese people's names at a convention? Generally, you can get by in an AnimeCon without knowing Japanese. I know I do. If you have issues of probably worrying about going up to one of your favorite Japanese artists, not really knowing how to say their name, definitely attend the opening ceremonies. They will announce their names in the best grammatical way they can of saying their Japanese names. In terms of knowing Japanese at a con, generally you don't really need to worry, because if you're going to go see an anime that's done truly in Japanese audio, there's always subtitles. There's no major events that are found in English-speaking conventions where you would need to know it, unless some cons specifically had an event. But in general, you can get by without knowing Japanese. If you have a question, comment, or maybe some fan art for the AnimeCons.com podcast crew, send it on in to podcast@animecons.com. The submitter of next month's selected question will win this Aria box set courtesy of the Right Stuff International. In this month's episode of the AnimeCons podcast, right off the bat, stop shaking your head. I can't deal with this negativity.
I'm blinking. I don't know what to say. Turn the camera. Baltimore, dude, gone.
Has crabs. Has crabs.
Has crabs. So here's a bunch of pictures and all about damn it.
Learn more at dreamhost.com. Was I really frowning? Or sit there and play fiddle on the banjo.